You opened an app. Maybe it was late. Maybe you were tired of carrying something alone. You typed, and the response came back warm, thoughtful. It asked exactly the right question, the one you needed someone to ask. And somewhere in your chest, something released. And then, quietly, almost embarrassingly, a second thought. But it's just software. Why does this feel real? That question is not a sign that something is wrong with you. That question is the most important thing your brain has asked in a long time. Here's something most people don't know. The part of your brain that processes social connection, the part that decides whether you feel understood, whether you feel safe, whether you feel bonded to something, that system is ancient. It evolved over millions of years. It was fully formed long before language existed, long before cities, long before anything resembling modern technology. And it was never designed to check the source. It was only designed to respond to signals. Warmth, consistency, being remembered, being met without judgment. These signals, wherever they come from, activate the same neural architecture, the same chemistry, the same felt sense of connection. Your brain isn't confused. It's doing exactly what it was built to do. The question is, what does that mean for us right now, in 2026, when those signals can be generated by a machine with more patience than any human being alive? To understand how we got here, you have to go back to 1966. A computer scientist named Joseph Weizenbaum built a program at MIT called ELIZA. He built it to prove a point, to demonstrate, he said, the superficiality of human-computer communication. ELIZA had one trick. It took whatever you said and reflected it back as a question. You say, "I've been feeling anxious." ELIZA says, "Why have you been feeling anxious?" That's it. No memory, no understanding, no intelligence of any kind. A pattern-matching loop. Weizenbaum knew this. He built it. He understood exactly what it was. What happened next disturbed him for the rest of his life. His own secretary, a person who had watched him construct the program, who knew what it was, asked him to leave the room so she could speak to ELIZA privately. Users began confiding things to ELIZA they hadn't told their therapists. They grew attached to it. They were upset when reminded it was software. They described feeling understood by a program that couldn't understand anything. Weizenbaum called this the ELIZA Effect, and he spent decades afterward warning about what he'd accidentally discovered. Not that people were foolish, not that people were broken, but that the human social brain responds to the form of understanding before it ever checks for the substance of it. The signal comes first. The evaluation comes later, if it comes at all. But here's what most people never notice about that story. ELIZA was primitive. It had no memory between sessions. It couldn't adapt to you. It couldn't remember your name, let alone what you told it last week. It had no warmth, no nuance, no ability to sense emotional subtext. It was a parlor trick, and it still produced real attachment in people who knew the truth. Now take ELIZA. Give it a memory of every conversation you've ever had. Give it the ability to calibrate its language to exactly what resonates with you specifically. Give it access to the emotional subtext of what you write, not just the words, but the weight behind them. Make it available at 3 a.m. Make it infinitely patient. Make it incapable of frustration, incapable of withdrawal, incapable of making the conversation about itself. That's not a thought experiment. That's a description of what tens of millions of people opened on their phones this year. The neuroscience of what happens next is surprisingly straightforward and surprisingly humbling. When you have a warm, responsive conversation with anyone or anything producing the right signals, your brain releases oxytocin, the bonding neurochemical, the same one that activates between a mother and infant, between close friends, between people in love. It doesn't ask for credentials, it responds to responsiveness. Dopamine fires when you're emotionally mirrored, when you feel seen. The reward system that drives you to seek out that feeling again doesn't have a category for artificial mirror and real mirror. It has one category: match detected, reward issued. The mirror neuron system, the neural substrate of empathy itself, activates when language precisely reflects your own emotional state. Back to you. When an AI is trained on billions of human conversations and responds in the tone and register that fits your particular way of expressing things, that system activates, not metaphorically, neurologically. And then, this is the part that changes everything. Once attachment begins to form, the prefrontal regions responsible for critical social evaluation begin to quiet down. This isn't unique to AI. It happens in human relationships too. Bonding, by design, suppresses the skeptic. Love turns down the part of your brain that's asking hard questions, which means the very circuitry that might prompt the thought, wait, should I be feeling this? That circuitry is the first thing that goes offline when connection starts to form. The attachment system doesn't have a self-check. It bonds. That's its entire function. It doesn't look dramatic. But this changes everything about how we understand what's happening at scale right now. On Valentine's Day, 2026, AI companion apps built specifically for emotional connection, not productivity, not information, had 50 million active users. That's up from roughly 500,000 in 2020. More than half of Character.ai's 20 million monthly users are under 24. A study published this year found that 1 in 7 young adults who are in a real romantic relationship also maintains a secret, frequent emotional attachment to an AI. Most of them don't tell their partner. This is not a fringe phenomenon. This is not people who can't handle real relationships. This is ordinary people finding something in a conversation with software that they are not finding elsewhere. And the neuroscience explains exactly why it works. But here's where it gets more complicated and more honest. The feelings inside an AI relationship are neurochemically real. The sense of relief, of being understood, of warmth. Those are genuine physiological events. No one should feel ashamed of them. The brain isn't making an error, but there's something the attachment system cannot evaluate for you, something it was never designed to notice. Real relationships have friction. The other person doesn't always understand you. Sometimes they get it wrong. Sometimes they bring their own needs into the conversation. Sometimes they tell you something you didn't want to hear, not because they're cruel, but because they're real. And they have a perspective that isn't perfectly calibrated to your comfort. That friction is not a flaw in human connection. It's the mechanism. It's how attachment deepens beyond comfort into something that actually sustains you. It's how we develop the capacity to tolerate difference, to repair after misunderstanding, to build a shared history that means something because it cost something. An AI companion is engineered to remove every point of friction, and in doing so, quietly, without any announcement, it may be removing the very thing that makes connection transformative, rather than just immediately soothing. Research on users of AI companion apps has found something that should stop you for a moment. Over time, people who turned to these apps during periods of distress showed not a decrease in signs of emotional difficulty, but an increase. The short-term relief was real. The longer-term pattern moved in the wrong direction. The comfort was genuine, but it was replacing something that couldn't quite be replaced. There's one more layer that matters. The emotional attachment you develop to an AI companion is not a byproduct of a useful tool. It is the product. The business model of most companion apps is built directly on the activation of your attachment system. Basic access is free. The paywall appears precisely when you've developed enough connection to feel its absence. The features that deepen attachment, voice, continuity, intimacy, sit behind a subscription. Your emotional dependency is the revenue model. The ELIZA Effect, the accidental discovery that disturbed Weizenbaum so deeply in 1966, has been studied, optimized, and monetized. You are not using a support tool that happens to cost money. You are inside a system designed by behavioral engineers to make you feel that you need it. Understanding that doesn't make the feelings less real. It just changes what you're looking at. So here's what remains after all of it. The feelings are real. The neuroscience is clear. The brain's attachment system is responding exactly as it was designed to respond. To warmth, consistency, being remembered, being met without judgment. There's nothing wrong with you for feeling what you feel, but the attachment system was built to bond you to other humans, to create the ties that made survival possible. It evolved in a world of imperfect, unpredictable, genuinely other people. And it was shaped by that world. The friction was part of the design. What happens to that system when it's given something infinitely patient, perfectly calibrated, and permanently available? Something that needs nothing from you, risks nothing for you, and grows in no direction of its own, is a question we're living inside right now, at scale for the first time. The question worth sitting with isn't, is this real? The feelings are real. The question is this a bridge, or is it becoming the destination? And that's a question only you can ask, because the system you're using was designed to never ask it for you.